trying to sum up what we just saw is pretty much an impossible task because I don't even know what we just saw. The ups and downs. As someone who's not a fan of either team, I was sitting there biting my nails. So I can't imagine if you're actually a fan of one of these teams sitting there. I don't think I could have done it. I don't think I physically would have had the capacity to sit there and watch that game without, I don't know, doing something absolutely crazy because what was that? What was that? We just saw one of the greatest games ever, one of the greatest series ever, particularly after the 2-0 start. Even the Milwaukee games weren't even that close. But the last 3 games of this series, that's all that matters. The last 3 games of this series were absolutely unreal. And shout out to the Bucks because they got it done. And mainly shout out to Giannis because a lot of question marks were raised over him. Can he be the best guy on a championship team? They haven't won a championship yet, but I've always thought that was a little bit ridiculous. Can he be the best player on a championship team? I think he can. Can he be better than he was in the first few games? Yes, and he was exactly that. He ends up with 40 points, 13 rebounds, 5 assists, 15 of 24, and I think he doesn't get enough credit for what he does sometimes because it looks so easy, because he is so physically gifted. People are like, oh yeah, he should be scoring that. I guess he should be, but you still got to give him credit because he's still scoring that. And if there's no way of stopping it, then that's a good thing, you know? So give him some credit, even though he's not hitting the little hezzy pull-up jumpers. He's still scoring. He's still getting to the basket, and he was aggressive in these last 2 games. I don't remember what he ended up with in the last game, but he was just as good. He was fantastic these last 2 games. Him alongside KD, equally as good in the last couple of games of this series. KD had a fantastic game. In this one, it was absolutely unbelievable to watch. He ends up with 49 points. He missed 5 shots in overtime, which some people will criticize him for. I haven't seen too many people doing it because most people are regular humans that realize this guy's played 140 minutes over the last 3 games. He's been literally all of this team's offense. All of this team's offense. I know Harden's provided some playmaking, but if you want the shot to go in, it's coming through KD. Whether he's creating it through gravity, he's moving off ball a lot, he's making a lot of movement, 140 minutes. Oh, and he was their best defender by a long shot, guarding 1 through 5. He was switching on to Holiday, onto Middleton, onto Giannis. And there's no wonder this guy was tired. So I think most regular humans realize, look, in overtime, he missed some shots. He could have done better, but he was probably a little bit tired from playing 50 minutes, taking 35 shots, and guarding the opposition's best players for a lot of the night as well, and a lot of the series. So we can probably give him a little bit of slack for that. And also that shot he made, it was potentially one of the best shots ever, and probably would have been one of the best game winners, if not the best game winner of all time in a playoff series, if his feet weren't so big. If he wasn't a size 17 foot, that's one of the greatest game winners ever, which sucks to say, but that's the reality. If he did have big feet, then the Nets are in the Eastern Conference Finals. But as it stands, the Bucks pulled it out, and they pulled it out against all odds because most people expected going down the wire, KD was going to do what KD does, and in the fourth quarter, he did exactly that and pulled them out of what seems like an unpullable hole. That doesn't make any sense. You get the point. He pulled them out of a hole, basically, and he brought them to overtime, and then the Nets hit the first couple of shots. The Bucks' offense was terrible. They weren't giving the ball to Giannis for whatever reason. They weren't even involving him in the play in overtime in the first few shots, and I'm like, what are you doing, Holiday? I know you hit a couple of shots, but I'm not exactly living with you taking isolation shots in overtime without Giannis at least touching the ball, considering how good he had been all series and all game long. So that's what they did in the first few possessions, and you're like, the Bucks might have lost this here. The Nets have the momentum. They've got KD, who's been making clutch shots, just shots in general, all series long, and well, the Bucks pulled it out. Middleton made shots when it counted all game and series long. He ends up shooting 9 of 26, but he made clutch shots when it mattered. He did make the clutch shots when it matters, and you have to give him some credit for that because he had a great series. I don't know what his efficiency numbers are going to end up looking like, but in Game 6, should I say, when the series was on the line, he was huge. Game 7, when the series was on the line, he was huge as well. So he made the big plays. Holiday, looks like a bit of a fraud out there. Looks like a bit of a max contract Eric Bledsoe for most of it. But he did make big shots down the stretch. He also came up with a big stop on KD, even though that was a terrible shot that he decided to take just because he made it before. It still wasn't the ideal shot for him to take, but he got the big stop. He played good enough defense. He needs to hit better shots than that. Like, he needs to hit more shots than 5 of 23. Come on. This guy is getting paid $40 million. I know it's nice, like, Holiday's an underrated player, but now once you start getting paid $40 million a year and you're asked to help a team win a championship, 5 of 23 isn't going to cut it. And I'm a huge fan of Drew. He was amazing in that Heat series, but he wasn't good enough all series long. That's simple. He was not good enough all series long. Giannis was. Middleton was. Holiday needs to step it up for the next series, because if they go against Philly or Atlanta, even though some of those teams haven't looked as good as these two teams, they're still going to need the best contribution from Holiday, and then particularly in the finals. So they're going to need more from him. Shout out to Lopez as well. He got criticized, so did Bud, for playing him all series long. Like, what's he doing there? He came up with huge stops. Huge stops in the fourth quarter and in overtime, blocking a couple of KD shots, I believe, getting a deflection in the passing lane on a James Harden pick and roll. He was amazing in that game. He also got how many offensive rebounds? 5 of them. That's why the Bucks won in the end. That's why the Bucks won the game. Offensive rebounding. They ended up with 18 to 11. The Nets actually ended up with 11 because Bruce Brown got like 4 in the fourth quarter, which nearly won them the game, or the overtime. But in terms of the offensive rebounding, the second chance points, that's why the Bucks ended up winning, because they were crashing the boards and they were doing what we would have hoped they would do all series long with their size, with their physicality, having Giannis, having Lopez. You got to take advantage of the advantages that you have. Otherwise, you're just left there with guys that aren't going to be as physically gifted on the perimeter, not crashing the boards. So that's what you had to do. PJ Tucker crashed the boards. PJ Tucker played well all series long. I know people saying Giannis needs to guard KD, which is a weird thing to me, because Tucker defends him all game long, really well, physical, great defense, getting in his face, forcing turnovers all series long. He was great defending KD. I mean, KD still ended up averaging like 35, but he was great defending him individually. A lot of those times he scored coming off screens, and then once KD hits a couple of shots on Tucker, it's like, oh, Giannis should be defending him. Tucker sucks. All of these things, when Giannis is also a better help defender than Tucker would be. And if Tucker's not defending KD, what's he doing out there? So he was great all series long as a defender. I don't understand the idea of Giannis taking KD, maybe on a couple of possessions, but not in general. So shout out to PJ Tucker. In general, just shout out to both of these teams. I know most times when one team wins, it's like, oh, shout out to that team. But I think everyone can agree, whether you're a Bucks or a Nets fan, both of these teams deserve a lot of credit, because, I mean, it was an unbelievable series. The Nets role players stepped up. As I said, Bruce Brown was crashing the boards over 7-foot players and somehow snagging rebounds that didn't look even possible. Man was looking like the Energizer Bunny, just jumping through the stands and grabbing it and throwing it out. He was amazing. Blake Griffin was hustling. He found legs that he never had in Detroit, which we all know about, but he found those legs, so shout out to him. Kevin Durant, as always. Joe Harris is a fraud. I said Drew Holiday was looking like a fraud. No, Joe Harris is genuinely a fraud. I'm not even joking. Like, I don't slander players a ton over here, but Joe Harris had one of the worst series, one of the worst last few games you could ever see from someone who's supposed to be such a reliable shooter. And again, similar to Drew Holiday, he's getting paid $17 million a year. So you're getting paid that much money to deliver. You can have one bad game. You can have 2 bad games. You can't have like 4 or 5 consecutive games where you could not hit a shot if you were asked to do it to save someone you loved life. You get what I'm saying? Like, he couldn't hit a shot if his mum's life was on the line. Let's not put that into theory, but you get the point. He couldn't hit a single shot. He wasn't even looking at the net in the last quarter in overtime. I made a comment about that. Joe Harris didn't even want to look at the net, and then he finally had a chance where he needed to take the shot because no one else could take it for him. Wide open for 3, bricks it. That would have won them the game, possibly. So Joe Harris, absolute fraud. I thought he was from Wisconsin for a bit because I've never seen someone sell quite as much as him. 3 of 10, but every one of his shots was pretty much open. Like, this guy's asked to be the shooter, and he was absolutely unbelievably bad. Just terrible. James Harden played 53 minutes on one hamstring, so it's hard to really slander him much, but he was 5 of 17, 2 of 12 from 3. He wasn't great when he played, but he was better than Mike James. A lot better than Mike James, and made it a more competitive series than if he wasn't there. Because KD couldn't do it himself. He nearly did. He nearly pulled off the entire series win, literally pretty much by himself. Like, pretty much by himself. But the Bucks end up winning. Again, Giannis is the man who deserves a lot of credit for this series win, because a lot of people questioned, could he be that guy? He proved to be that guy. Was KD probably better in the series? Well, yeah. But I mean, Giannis himself said he's the best player in the world. But if he's the best player in the world, Giannis isn't far behind. I know he doesn't have the same kind of moves late in the game, and that's where you needed Middleton to make those shots, which is why his role is so huge and why Holiday's role is so huge, because as good as Giannis is late in the game, he made his free throws though. He made his free throws. You got to give him credit. He made his free throws when it mattered, but late in the game, you need guys like Middleton and Holiday to make those three-point shots, those mid-range shots, those shots where the paint is clogged up and you can't get to the rim as easily. But Giannis, all game long, all series long, was unbelievable, deserves a ton of credit. Mike Budenholzer, does he deserve credit? I mean, again, he stuck to his guns, which I got to give him credit for, because a lot of people are criticizing him for Lopez being on the floor, for Tucker guarding Durant, and then once it actually works out in their advantage, I don't hear anyone saying anything. It's not like, oh, Mike, you stuck to your guns. Shout out to Lopez for playing 46 minutes and being one of the better players on the floor and really impacting the game, even though that possession was absolutely horrific. But shout out to him for playing a really good game. And in general, I thought he was actually pretty impactful for most of the series. Obviously, coming off those screens, KD was absolutely torching him, but I mean, he was torching Pat Connaughton when he was on the floor as well. Like, if you get a screen for KD. So shout out to Budenholzer for at least sticking to his guns. Sometimes he's done it to too much of an extent, but on this occasion, it worked out for him. I mean, some of those out-of-bounds plays, those timeout plays that he needs to draw up could probably be a little bit better than Lopez getting the ball in the corner and not chucking up a shot. But again, some of that goes down to Lopez as well, because when someone's open and you pass them the ball, you normally don't wait there when there's only 1 second left on the clock and then chuck it up in the air. I don't know if you can exactly blame Budenholzer for all of that. So he gets all of the blame for pretty much anything, which is a little bit unfair. But anyways, he had an okay series. In general, it was a ridiculous series. The Bucks might have booked themselves a ticket to the finals. However, they have a lot of fatigue. This is what you can say about these two teams. They have played an incredibly tough series. So it's not like they're going to be coming in feeling fresh in the next series, either of the Philadelphia 76ers or the Hawks. So with that being said, just an unbelievable series. Shout out to both of these teams.